y'all have this weird Texas pride that no other state has. Like, what do you mean? Doesn't everybody have a state pride? And I realized as we became friends, okay, when you walk in a store, there's Texas-shaped chips, Texas-shaped pies, like anything is Texas-shaped and everything. So we're a little strange, but we're so excited to be here with y'all. You'll have a beautiful state, beautiful area. Like Alyssa said, it's a little cold for us, but you know what? We'll brave the cold to come and share with y'all what God's doing in Peru, because God's doing some pretty awesome things. God's working, and for some reason He's allowing us to be there and see and take part in what He's doing. So we just encourage y'all to listen with an open heart. And I understand I talk fast. I usually get really excited and just go. So if I need to slow down or you don't understand something, please raise your hand or just tell me to stop talking or slow down. Or if you have questions in the middle while we're showing pictures, feel free. Please ask questions. And we love for y'all to ask questions and to answer questions. So this is our family. This picture is about a year old. I'm holding Jack in the blue shirt. Elizabeth's at the bottom. And this is Sam. Alyssa's holding Sam. Sam was only a few months old there, and now he just turned a year. So we are so grateful that God has given us these beautiful kids who are also missionaries with us. Elizabeth, she sometimes has a hard time being in the jungle and being in Peru away from our family, but we always tell her, you're just as much as missionary as we are. She's able to reach people that we can't reach. And so God's not only using Alyssa and I, but He's using our kids. He uses our kids to bridge the gaps between us and these villagers in Peru that maybe we would never have been able to have that connection. But through our kids, He's allowing these connections to be made. So God is awesome. He's a pretty powerful God. And it's just, like I say, He's doing some awesome things. So in the next slide, you'll see a picture of Peru. So I know it's kind of, South America, not Peru. So if you can see on the top left side, there's a little red circle. And that is the city in Peru that we are at. So if you kind of look at the top part of South America, all that green part is the Amazon basin. So the dark green part's the Amazon basin. So it's about the size of continental U.S. It is a massive area, and that is chock full of unreached tribes. And so we are in one portion of the Amazon. We're at the base of the Amazon. So the start of the Amazon, we're on a river called the Mountaint River, and that converges with several other rivers, which makes the Amazon. And so we're in a pretty unique spot where we get to see all the rivers come together to make the huge Amazon River. It's a pretty awesome area, but like I said, it's a really remote area. So whenever we're doing ministry and whenever we are reaching these different tribes and churches, it's all done by boat or by walking. Because, you're talking an area where there's no roads. There's nothing. Transportation is airplanes and boats, which kind of gives us a huge task because, it's not an easy area to travel. So I think in the next slide, you'll see a little bit better of where we are at. So the yellow part is called Iquitos, and that's where we fly into. And there's one road, one highway in that area. I don't know if you can kind of see this white line coming down from the yellow to the red. So it's a highway that just put in about 30 years ago, and it connects Iquitos with another large town in Peru called Mountaint, right here. And so we'll take a plane, we land in Iquitos, and then we take a bus down to Mountaint, and we get on the river, and we come about a 2-hour ride to right here. And this is where our village is at. And I'm not sure, I think the next picture might have a better view of our village. Let's see. Nope, that's just me. So in 2013, I took my first trip to this area of Peru. My actually first trip to Peru was 2011 or so. And so I'm right here in the red shirt. And the other guy, you see the other white guy with sunglasses, he is a missionary in Peru. And he reached out to me and said, hey, I heard that you're interested in missions, and I want you to come and just see what missions is about. Just come, spend the summer with me, and see the logistics of missions. And so I spent the summer with him, and we heard about a pastor who was sick in a remote village. He said, let's just go see what's going on with this pastor. Let's see what we can do, how we can serve them. So we went out to our village. It's called the 9th of October, and it's actually the village we're in today. And the 9th of October is because the day that they were recognized by the government as a village. So there's lots of villages down there that are called. There's 13th of February. There's another 10th of October. So there's a lot of villages whose names are the days that they became recognized by the government, which is pretty interesting. So we went down to the 9th of October to meet this pastor, and he had a stroke, and he wasn't doing well. And so Brandon and I decided, hey, we're going to organize a trip to come in and just help this pastor, help him maybe do some sort of children's ministry or something just to help encourage the church and help him out a little bit. And so we did. We talked to our organization, or to our association back home, the St. Philippa Baptist Association, and they organized a trip. And they sent a group out. And in the next picture you'll see we did children's ministry, we did women's ministry, and we did church services. And the whole idea was just to see what we could do, how we could help. But really, it's just that first trip just to kind of break the barriers, just to show them, hey, we're here, we love you guys, and we want to serve you. And actually, that pastor, he just passed away about 3 years ago from COVID. And so he had a stroke, and he was bedridden, and God, completely healed him, and he had a couple more years of service. So God really used him.
So in the next slide, this is Sam and Marcy Nicholson. They went on that trip with Kyle to just kind of see what the village was about. They happened to be on a trip with their church. They're from Rosenberg, Texas. They happened to be on a trip to Peru, and then kind of took a mini trip within that and went and visited this village. So Sam and Marcy, God has used them to start this ministry. It's Kokama Project. Sam was a full-time engineer. Everything was a project to him. So when God had them retire and move to the jungle, it became his next project. And the people we live among are the Kokama people. Therefore, we have Kokama Project. And Marcy was a full-time teacher. After this trip, they went home and God said, pack up, you're moving to the jungle. So they both retired and moved out to the jungle and started the little compound that we're on right now. They've been there about 10 years. If you look at the next slide, one of Sam's big projects that he wanted to work on was building boat docks. Because I don't know if you know anything about people in Latin America, they are very pulled back, especially Peruvians, and even more so the men in the culture. And so he's like, I got to get to know these guys, and I don't speak Spanish. How am I going to do this? So God was like, let's get them involved in building something. So he went to boat docks. So they began figuring out a way to build these boat docks, and so he had a quite large group of men that he was able to work with and kind of begin relationships with. And so that was a kind of a beginning point for them. So in the next slide, is that their house? Yes. Okay, so this is the house that Sam and Marcy first lived in. They called it the hut. If you can kind of tell, tin roof, walls don't go all the way up. Inside, they had mosquito net tents, sleeping bag inside, and they lived like that for 2 years before things kind of began to change. But in that 2 years' time, they really began to cultivate these relationships with these villagers. In most villages in the Amazon, white people are terrifying because you come in and they believe that we are going to steal your face. We don't know where it comes from. It's a long line of parents telling their kids to be afraid of white people. We don't know. But they call us face peelers, and it took a very long time for Sam and Marcy to be accepted into the village. Very long time. Because if you look at that picture of Sam, he's 6'3", 250 pounds. He now has this giant beard and long white hair. He can be a little scary to Peruvians who are about this big. So he's a little bit scary, but God just really started making these relationships, and that's one of our biggest jobs, is just cultivating relationships with these people. So God had them there for years, and then 2016, I think, if you go to the next slide. This is our compound. So on that side, that is the village, and then you see the walkway that goes all the way through. This is our compound on that side. So the first house over here, this is where Sam and Marcy live. And then you keep going, and the big building on top is what we call Casa Grande. It's like our big meeting room. We have river pasture bunkhouses in there. It's kind of like the mess hall, kind of. And then across from that, we have Casa Chica, which is like our small classroom area. We have our medico in there. And then there's the kitchen. And then the red square, this is an old Google Maps picture. So the red square is where our house currently is. So we live on the top floor. And on the bottom floor is our U.S. pastor bunkhouse. So that's where we house everybody and things like that. So this is kind of our compound.
So when Sam and Marcy first moved in, the villagers came to Sam and said, we're stuck in a situation and we're not sure how to get out of it. So the land that's right next to the village, the land where you see our house, there's a lady who owns it. It's about 60 acres and she's going to sell it. And they said, right now our problem is we have to walk through her property to get to our farms. I mean, this is a very remote place. They live and survive by their farms. And so they said, she told us we can't walk through her place again because she's trying to sell it and they don't want the next buyers to see people just, walking through the village, walking through her land. And they're like, we don't know what to do because if we can't walk through property, it's going to take a whole extra several hours to go all the way around to get to our farms. And so Sam and Marcy said they went home and broke their piggy banks, is what they say, and bought this land as a way to, again, bridge those gaps between the villagers to show them, hey, we not only love you and care for you, but we're going to show you that we're going to stay here and we're going to commit to you long periods of time. Like, if you're buying a 60 acres, that's commitment. They're committing. And so the house that we showed you the previous picture, that was the house that was on the property. So where this first white house is right here, there was just one little house right here, and that's all the property had. And so over the years, through years, and we'll explain more, it's come to this. I mean, it keeps growing and growing and growing. And people always ask us, what is our big problem? And right now our biggest problem is growth. God is opening doors are flying open, and we don't have enough people. We don't have enough help and enough missionaries to complete that task, which is, that's, if you're going to have a problem, that's a problem to have.
So in the next picture, this is one of the main things that Kokama Project takes on is pastor trainings. So 4 times a year, U.S. pastors from the States come down to us, and we facilitate these 4 pastor trainings. So it takes river pastors to a week to get to where we are because they either have to fly in and then take a boat, or they take three days worth of boat travel. Things are dangerous at night, so they can only travel during the day. It takes a while for them to get to us. So this is the first pastor training, and there's about 12-ish people, including wives. And so this was just by word of mouth from Nauta and the surrounding area. So then this picture was that next year. Oh, sorry, next picture. This picture is that next year in the same exact building, and it's doubled or more. Word of mouth, just people saying, hey, there's these guys teaching. And the reason why pastor training is such a big deal is people feel called and led to lead a church or have community in their home or anything like that. They have no formal Bible training. We have found that some of them have never heard the Bible as a whole, don't have all the stories together. Some of them haven't seen the Old Testament. Some of them haven't seen the New Testament. So we found that teaching basic gospel all the way through, Bible straight through, has been extremely important and very important for these pastors. So then they take it and take it back to their churches. And so this is the start of where Kokama Project kind of began. And so with that, it exploded. So in the next picture, this was the original Casa Grande. And this side is the side where the bunkhouses were. So on the other half, you have where they met. And it's probably the size of this section of chairs front to back. And they pack it out. Their families and everybody would come with them, and we would just teach. We weren't with them yet, but they would just teach these U.S. pastors. And this was next picture. This was the last training before COVID, I believe, before COVID hit, and then Peru shut down as a whole. They came out to the village, said no meeting, nothing. So, but this was the last one, and we had to start telling the pastors you can only bring one other person, a pastor, your wife, a pastor, another person from your church, something like that, because we were running out of room. We didn't have enough space. We didn't have enough food to cook for everybody, and so it was beginning to a good problem. So we were limiting that. So now this was about 35, 40 in total, I think, was the last pastor training before COVID shut down.
So as you saw from the first picture, we went from just a few pastors to 30 plus. And so year by year, we saw this thing growing and growing and growing. And so we had a space issue. So we had to build this big building just to house these pastors. And so when they come to us for a week. Like Alyssa said, they're traveling from miles, sometimes hundreds of miles away. Some of them have to get in an airplane. They fly in prop planes through the military and come to us. And so you're talking people who are coming from far away. So we have to house them. We have to feed them. And so we have an awesome group of people who come and help us from our village, from Peru, come and help us cook, come and help clean, and also we'll pay them. So it generates revenue for our village, and it helps them survive. And so we're not only helping these pastors, we're helping just a random group of people to come in, and it's just an awesome tool that we're able to use. Yeah. So like Alyssa talked about what the training is. So right now, this next year, we're starting the commandments of Christ. And so we're going to go through the book of Matthew and talk about this is what Christ has commanded us, and go through the scripture like that. And last year, we did the book of Acts. And so pastors who have come to us before, recurring pastors, they go through whatever training we're given and whatever training we're hosting at that time. But if we have any new pastors, we used a Bible storying method. And so what they come and they sit for a week, and we tell the Bible stories. We share the stories with them. And what we've come to find out is, a lot of these pastors who have been pastors for 20 plus years know a very limited amount of the Bible, limited stories, just because, like Alyssa said, either they have the New Testament or they have the Old Testament, and they've never seen the Bible as a whole. And so it's really awesome to be able to see that light bulb click. Like, okay, the Old Testament is connected to the New Testament. Like, it's not two different stories. No, it's a complete Bible. It's a complete set. And, looking at the Old Testament, pointing to the New Testament. And so it's just really cool for them to see that, and to be able to be a part of teaching these pastors. Okay. Yeah. So we'll go to the next slide. I think I was telling Andrew this yesterday, but God really just blows my mind at the things that he's doing. So we've had, on 2 different occasions, pastors who've knocked on our door or have called a friend of ours and said, hey, we heard that you're doing pastor trainings. And so one is right here. So the blue arrow is where we currently live, and the red dot here at the bottom is a group of villagers. And so this red line right here is the border between Brazil and Peru. And so we had people reach out from down there and said, hey, we heard that you are doing pastor trainings. Can you come tell us about who God is? And so, first of all, this is a very remote village. They have no outside contact. We have no idea, first of all, how they got a hold of us and how they knew that we were doing pastor trainings. And so one of our huge goals for this next year, if you go to the next slide, is reaching out to the Mountaint people. And they're known as the cat people. And if you see right here on the left side, this lady has what looks like whiskers coming out of her nose. And so we have a huge issue with jaguars in the jungle. And so what they do is they will stand on each other's shoulders. So like this, a person will stand on somebody else's shoulder to be bigger than a cat to scare these jaguars away. And so they're known as the cat people. And so this is the traditional dress right here. If they have ceremonies or anything, they stick their spines in the necklaces, and that's their traditional the traditional look. And if you also see around her lips, she has tattoos. And I was always curious about what this signified. And so I've asked a guy, I can't remember his name. I love this, Orlando. I love this guy. He's a really neat guy. I was like, what is the purpose of those tattoos? Why do y'all have them? And so he was explaining to me that about actually this is about 30 years ago that they stopped doing this. He said that the Montaists were known to be very, very dangerous and very deadly people. He said what they would do is they would come in and they would raid other villages. So what happens is these villages are very, like I said, very remote and very isolated. And so the problem is there's usually not enough women for the men. And so the men will go out and raid these other villages and kill all the men and kill all the boys and kidnap all the women, kidnap all the women and the young girls. And so what he says is they tattoo like this around their face as an identifying mark for maybe later on in life, if they were to ever meet one of their tribe people or their family, they would know which tribe they were from due to the design of the tattoo around their lips and around their face. And so it's really cool, really interesting. But this was 30 years ago. And, I mean, a pretty recent time, they were raiding and killing him. He was telling stories, and pretty horrible stories. And now they're reaching out and saying, we want to know about God. We want to know who God is. And so that is one of our goals for this next year. We talked about the 4 pastor trainings, but we're going to do 5 this year. And the 5th is going to be traveling. So we're going to take a group of people, and we're going to go to a village by these people. It's a Montaists village, but it's not the village that was the red dot on the Brazil and Peru line, our border. Because what they told us is we're allowing one person to come, and this guy lives in the village, Montaists village, that had the lady with the whiskers. We're allowing him to come into our village and tell us about God, but if he brings anybody else with him, we're going to kill him and that person. They're not allowed in here. And so what we're going to do this next year is we're going to go to that tribe, the Mountaint tribe, and we're going to go to this Mountaint tribe, and we're going to share the gospel with them. And then they're going to go out to this other tribe and start sharing the gospel with them. And so what that means is we're going to be reaching more than just these Montaists. We're reaching the Matis, the Kanmari, the Marubo, and the Karubo. And so this is our really exciting for us, because it's not only now are people coming to us, but we're able to reach a whole different group of people. I mean, just we can't even fathom. I'm not even sure the impact that this is going to make on Peru and on these tribes, but. These are completely unreached, uncontacted tribes. Never been in. No one has ever been in, and they have never been out. And so, like I said, God is really doing some awesome things, really opening doors. And like I said, He's allowing us to be a part of that.
It's been really cool for us to be a part of this because, like you said, these are unreached in and out. They've never been out. Nobody's been in, and they're asking. And so what happened was the guy that's allowed to come in to this prohibited village he was stolen and back and forth, and then now he's connected. And they said, you can come in, and that's it. And so God has really just kind of made this way. And this has been 30 years ago that He started this plan. And now we're beginning to see this all come forth, and God's really been opening the doors, and just really we have no idea how they heard about it, how they've heard about us, and so we're just we're excited to see what God's going to be doing. So during COVID, the village was shut off. So if you go to the next slide, this was one of our main concerns during COVID is the village was shut off from going to town, so they couldn't buy food. They were restricted to going to their farms. The military would come out and tell them, you leave your house, we're going to kill you. It was very dangerous for them. Personally, I think that the military brought COVID to the village to begin with, but that's just my own thought. But one of the things we were allowed to do that we finally worked with the government was a couple of people from the village were allowed to go buy food and make it. And once a day, we were able to feed our kids and some of the extremely poor families in the village. And so this is one of those pictures from that that we were able to help them with.
So at this point in time, Melissa and I were actually in Costa Rica learning Spanish. And so we weren't actually we were a part of Co-Common Project, but we hadn't actually been in country yet. And so it was really a blessing when we were stuck in the States. But I don't know if you know anything about Peru and COVID, but Peru had the highest death rate in the world due to COVID. I think it was 250,000 people, around 225,000 people died of COVID during that time. And so Peru had no idea what to do, and so they just shut everything down. I mean, those videos going around on Facebook in Iquitos, people leaving their homes and the military running them down and shooting them. I mean, they didn't know what to do. They basically said, if you leave your house, you can't, you're in trouble. And so they enacted martial law, and it was terrible for like our villagers. You're talking about people who don't have refrigerators, don't have electricity. I mean, there's nothing. So their survival and the way that they make a living is through their fields, through fishing, through farming. I mean, there's no other way to make a living. And so it was really oppressive. It was just terrible, but there's nothing we could do about it. And so, like Alyssa said, we're able to feed them, especially the kids, 1 meal a day. We're able to send a doctor out to the village, and he not only treated COVID, but he treated pinworms, he treated malaria, he treated malnutrition. There's just a lot that he was able to do, but God has his plan, God has his purpose, and he had to plan through all that. But during COVID, while we weren't able to meet, and Alyssa and I were actually in Peru at this period of time, if you go to the next slide, if you like you saw in all the other pictures, we have wooden structures. I mean, all of our structures, all of our buildings are wooden, with thatch roofs. And living in the Amazon rainforest, it's a very harsh climate on wood. We don't have anything. We don't have treated wood. If we were building a building, we go cut down our own trees. We make our own wood with trees. So we're able to use that time to totally rebuild our compound. The big building y'all saw, Casa Grande, we're able to totally rebuild it with brick and concrete. So even though we weren't able to have meetings, we used that time to rebuild our whole compound. And last year was the first year that we've been running and gunning, and everything's going great. So it really was, even though it was a hard year, it was a good year for us to kind of, okay, this we gotta get ready. This is the next year, kind of get everything ready to go.
It was a blessing. We were bummed that we didn't get to have pastor trainings, but it was good for us as a family. Elizabeth and Jack got to be accustomed to the village without a ton of other people there. I was pregnant with Sam while we were there, so we just kind of got to relax as a family on the mission field and become a part of 9 de Octubre. And that's just to become a part of the village and grow relationships without the distractions of pastor trainings and other people and the busyness that comes with that. So that was a super big blessing for us as a family. So these two guys here are, next slide, sorry. This is Harrison and Leoncio, and these guys are irreplaceable. They are villagers from our village, and they work for Co-Common Project. And these guys are a mission field in and of their own. We love them so much. They're a part of our family. And they're great. So Harrison, that guy, he has he's been working for us almost the entire 10 years that Sam and Marcy have been around. They're both irreplaceable, but they do maintenance, construction, work the day-to-day, keep things running, and things like that, help us with the facilitation of the pastor trainings and any other projects that we're working on. Both of these guys are huge in that. And Leoncio, the guy on the other side, he's a workhorse, man. You tell him to do anything, and he's going to get it done with a smile on his face, singing, happy all the time. But these guys, for us, especially during the year right after COVID, when we had first gotten back, they were our mission field, and it's been amazing to see the growth both of them have had just from Kyle being able to work with them outside and talk with them in Spanish and just be able to have real conversations about things that they worry about and things that are problems in their family. And one of the main problems that the village as a whole deals with is the oppression of shaman, which are witch doctors and things like that. So we are, this village is sandwiched between us on one side, and there's a ashram on the other side. So there's a witch doctor jungle juice lodge on the other side. So they're smack dab in the middle. And so Kyle's had lots of conversations with them about God or witch doctors, who has more power, and talking about God's power and what that is, and talking with Leoncio and his family about, Christ and things like that. So they were a huge mission field to us when we first got there, and they have just grown exponentially.
So Sam, he knew what he was doing whenever he when we had our first pastor training, he told them, listen, I don't want y'all cutting things, hammering, chainsaw, because they're always bored looking for something to do, so they'll go cut trees down. Sam said, I want you to just sit in the pastor training and just sit. If anybody needs anything, you can get up and go help them with whatever. But his thought was, I want them to sit in and hear the gospel. And so after the first pastor training, Harrison, the guy on the left, it was the last day. Our pastors were going back home. Everybody was loading on the boat, and Sam was going with them too, back to Iquitos. And Harrison came running down the stairs, running down to Sam, and said, I want to rededicate my life to Christ. I haven't been living the way I'm supposed to be living, and I want to give my life to Christ. And that was about 8 years ago. And so he rededicated his life to Christ, but Leoncio wouldn't. We didn't know why. Leoncio, the guy on the right, he just kept saying, I can't right now. And so we really didn't know why. And last year, I sat down with Leoncio and we just talked. We just talked about life, and I don't purposely tell him, you need this, you need to do this, you need to give your life to Christ. But, I'm just, tell me about you, what's going on, tell me about your life, tell me about your past. And so he was telling me about how he used to serve in the military. And he said, during that time, he said it was just horrible. I mean, the Peruvian military did some horrible things. And he said, I was on the border of Brazil and Peru, and he said there was a lot of drug trafficking, and he said it was a horrible time. And he said, my whoever it was commander told me that I was in charge of torturing. He said if we ever needed information from a cartel member or from anybody, my job was to torture them to get the information. And he said I had to do some pretty terrible things and ultimately kill people. And so we never knew why he wanted to give his life to Christ. We never knew why he was so opposed, and now we know why. Because he feels like he's unworthy. He feels like that God could never forgive him for what he's done. And so, it's things like that if you don't build a relationship, if you just go in and plant a church and leave, you're never going to know these things. You're never going to know how you can really evangelize, how you can really help somebody if you don't have a relationship with them. So, that is our goal. That's our job. We go days, sometimes weeks without maybe actually sharing the gospel with somebody, but because we're not stuck, we're placed in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. I mean, we have sometimes no contact with anybody. Sometimes we'll just go walk around the village because, as you saw in the picture, we're about a football field away from the village. So we'll just go walk and talk with people. And there's some days that I have these breakthrough conversations with like Leoncio, and I realize this is why we're here. Because there's sometimes Alyssa and I are sitting, especially at nighttime, sitting at the table, our kids are asleep, and we're just kind of out in the middle of the Amazon jungle, no electricity. We're thinking, what are we doing? we're nuts. What are we doing out here? Why don't we bring our kids here? And then things like this happen. We're like, all right, we see. God's allowing us to see. God's so gracious that He allows us to see things sometimes that really kind of gives us that pep in our step, like, okay, we need to keep going because this is really what we're called to do. This is our job. So this past year, year to year looks different for our ministry. Day to day is different. This past year, we had a lot of medical issues in our village. I was a licensed EMT basic, so I'm able to kind of use that as a way to minister to our village. And so this past year, we've had a lot of major things happen with our villagers, and so since we're so far away from any sort of medical facility, we help them. We'll send them into town, or we'll buy medicines for them. So we had one guy, his name was Anselmo, and he's not on the slideshow, but I took a picture. I know it's probably kind of hard to see. Or you can just show it. Anselmo had what's it called, Alyssa? I drew a blank. Hernia. He had a hernia about the size of a basketball on his stomach. And he told us that, I don't really want to go to the hospital. I'm scared to go to the hospital. I just want to try with vegetable medicine. So I want to try with boiled leaves. They do a lot of coca leaves and different things to help with different illnesses. So he told us, he said, I don't want to go to the hospital yet. I just want to stay here and see if we can figure it out. So about 6 to 8 months, he stayed in the village with this massive hernia, getting worse and worse and worse. And so I told him, I said, you need to stop being so opposed to medicine. Just go to the hospital. Come on, let's see what we can do. So we sent him to the hospital, and of course he had heart condition, he had pneumonia. There's just so much more involved than just the hernia. So after several months of continual appointments at the hospital, getting him good enough for surgery, he finally got the surgery about 2 months ago. And about a month and a half ago, he finally came back to the village. And he was doing great. He was doing awesome. For the first time, I saw him walking around the village. He was a changed man. He was. And he said, it's only by God's grace that I'm here. He actually, in the process, rededicated his life to Christ. Him and his wife both. And so it was a really, really awesome time for us and him both. And then about a month ago, about a month or 3 weeks ago, we got a call from his nephew, and his nephew called me. He was just crying. And I was like, "What's wrong? What's going on?" Sorry. He said, "Anselmo died." Like, what? What's going on? What happened? He's like, "I don't know." He was screaming in pain, and all of a sudden he was dead. And it's times like that I don't understand God's plan. I don't understand what God's doing. But God had a purpose. God had a reason for each time, for each journey, each thing that the man went through, because he went through a lot. He went through a lot of surgeries and a lot of just craziness. But God used that. God changed my life for that man's life. He was just an awesome guy. But our ministry is so much more than pastor training. The good thing, and what I like about our ministry is, like for you as a church, if you ever wanted to come in and join our ministry and just do a trip, what that trip looks like for you is completely different from any other church, because what your church body looks like is what you can implement in our village. There's medical needs, there's different training needs, anything you can possibly think of can be used there. And what I've seen with a lot of churches is they say, I can't do pastor training because I never went to school. I don't have the education for that. But like I said, you're talking about pastors who don't know anything about the gospel, and we're so fortunate that we as Americans, churched Americans, even through our Sunday school growing up, many years of Sunday school, know more than they know as pastors. We're so fortunate, we're so blessed to have churches and to learn and to grow in our faith through the church. And so the amount of knowledge that you know in Christ is infinitely more than they know. So you are an asset as you are. And so, like I said, anything that you feel led to do or feel like you could help, it can be implemented.
So one of my favorite things that we do as a family is every day at about 2:00, a plethora of village children come and invade our home. So these are, this is almost 2 years ago. Goodness, our babies are little, but this little girl on this side, they come, take the kids, wander around, they play outside, they play in our house. We have games and puzzles, and if you go to the next one, you'll see some more. But on the top is one of our children's church days. So we have taken it upon ourselves to do children's church on Sunday mornings. There is nothing for the kids in the village. We do have 2 churches within the village, but the children get ignored often, which is crazy because they make up 2/3 of the entire village. The amount of children. There are so many kids. So we've taken it on ourselves to just invite them into our house and just let them invade our life, and we love on them. And through that, we've made relationships with their parents because we know the kids. And like Kyle was explaining at the beginning, our kids are missionaries themselves. Samuel, who's a year old, can't even walk. He has gone into so many houses in the village that we don't know. We'll have some of the teenagers, they've watched our kids before. They'll take him and he'll be gone for a couple of hours and then we'll go get him. And we're walking through the village and people we don't know are calling our kids names. Hey, how are you? And playing with the kids. And okay, so now we go into their homes and we begin relationships with them. Sam, Jack, and Elizabeth have all been in most of the homes in the village just from playing with other kids, and they're in and out all day long. And so our kids are missionaries too, which is amazing to watch. But having children's church has been one of the best things for us. We've had to learn how to do things totally different. One of my favorite things that we do with these kids is we encourage them to memorize Bible verses. And so they're extremely competitive with one another. So we've told them, you get a prize if you memorize a Bible verse. So when they show up and they haven't and their friends get it, ooh, it's a competition now. And so they're learning scripture. And so every couple of weeks we have them tell us all of the ones that they've learned from the past, say, 6 weeks. And then we have a big party. So they're learning scripture, and the way we look at it is these are the next leaders of the village. So if we can raise them to have the word of God in them, the village is going to change. And it takes time, and some days it's frustrating, but it's one of our favorite things to have kids in the village. One of my favorite things is they leave their shoes outside our door, and you got to climb over mountains of shoes to get into the house, and I love it because they just invade our space, and it's great. So that's one of our big things that us as a family that we do. And day to day, that does change. So kids change, coming in and out, and they're one of our big mission fields. So that's something else that, as a whole, you could come and do children's ministry in the village because there are a lot of kids, and kids minister to kids. The last group that was there was our home church, and they brought he's 11 years old, and I've never seen a missionary kid he walked in and knew exactly what he was going to do and pinpointed the one kid out of the entire village that gets picked on, pushed to the side, knows he's unwanted, he's a castaway. And Weston found him, didn't know that he was the castaway, and they became friends for the entire week. And neither of them spoke the other language, and it was beautiful to see. And so I don't know where I was going with that, but it just blessed our hearts to see God can use anyone. God can use any age, anything to do his work if you're willing. So
we could talk forever. We have story after story, but if we have a Facebook page, so if you have Facebook, it's called Peans to Peru, Pean. Peans to Peru. So there's pictures and videos and updates and stories. So in our newsletters, we do monthly newsletters, and so we'll post that to our page. So like I said, we could talk forever, but if you go look in there, there's more pictures and different stories and stuff. So if you might have any questions, we'd love to answer questions, or if not, then thank y'all for letting us come. Mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are bad. We've learned also that there's these black flies, they're like horse flies, and those things, they bite and they hurt. So yeah, mosquitoes are bad. Midday when there's sun, we don't really have any issues, but in the shade and in the evenings, we learn not to go outside because they will pick you up and take you away.
Yeah.
So, just logistics. If people don't know Spanish, what does that look like?
So we hire translators with each group that comes in, and so a lot of our churches coming in, they don't know Spanish, and so what they'll do is they'll teach in English, and we'll have translators that translate it while they're teaching, which it takes a little bit to get used to at first, teaching with the translator, because you get excited and you just want to go and go and go, but yeah, we'll have translators that translate.
And they're seasoned translators, so they're really good about translating not only your words but your enthusiasm, and they worked with us for a long time, so yeah, they're great. So through translation.
What do we have to do for months? Asking for information about
Kathy,
Yeah.
there hasn't been a date set aside.
Okay.
That's all super flexible. Whoever may or may not be interested, feel free to suggest time.
Yeah, as a church, y'all can just get together and talk on what looks best as a church as a whole. If you're wanting to do that, and Kathy and Andrew would be your contact with us, because we'll do it around our other people that are coming. But we're super flexible. Any time of the year, it's great. It's either going to be hot and dry or hot and rainy. So pick your hot. So, but yeah, so just as a whole, y'all will be able to talk and see what works best for y'all.
The last group that came in, one of the guys made an hour-long video of the whole process of landing, going, traveling, the whole thing. So I would suggest looking at that because I can explain everything I can to you, but it's different when you go. But just to see the videos and just see just the different aspects of that. It's on our Facebook page, right?
If not, I'll post it again.
We'll post it on our Facebook page, so I would suggest going and just seeing it. Like I said, I can explain, but it's different once you see it.